One natural disaster could change your life forever. What can you do? Turn to AARP. We help older adults and their families prepare, respond, and recover with evacuation checklists to help you remember prescriptions and other essentials, information to help you avoid scammers, connections to on-the-ground emergency responders, and lots of other tips and tools. At AARP, we're here to help. Find us at aarp.org/local.
Time, weather, and
Always. How you doing, everybody? I'm Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips. Heat's still the hot topic of weather conversation, right? Just smashed the previous record for rainfall in Tampa. Still a very nice day. We've got some clouds out there, even a couple of sprinkles as another front rolls through the area. Most of us wake up to sunshine and then very warm temperatures in the afternoon. Our temperatures, they're going up and they're staying up. Really nice forecast, especially if you're planning on going to the beach or the pool. Rain chances very slim. It's another beautiful day in store. It's going to bring us a very high chance of storms. Isolated showers across the area. Mother Nature likes to remind us that it isn't set by a calendar. We're always on it for you, just in case things begin to pop.
Streaming from the ABC Action Weather Center in Studio A, this is Denis Phillips Live, sponsored by AARP Tampa Bay.
How you doing, everybody? ABC Action News Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips. You know what? I just noticed something. The teleprompter isn't switched, so I can't see my graphics. So stand by. I'm going to go over and flip the button. I'll be back in a second. I promise. See, now this is what DPL is all about. I think you can still hear me as I'm walking over here and hitting prompter. No, I got it. There we go. Okay, prompter is switched. All right, I'm coming back. Stand by. Clearly the tone of tonight's show is quite a bit more typical than, hey, how's it going? Thalia was like, oh my gosh, I forgot. So she ran over and says, I need to be able to see the graphics and stuff. So, you know what? I kind of figured this could be kind of a decompression show. We can certainly talk about lessons that we learned about the storm, lessons that we've learned about the forecast. I want to hear from you. I really, really, truly want to hear from you and how things went for you and what you learned and what you would rather have seen more of. I think that's an important thing as well. And certainly for me, I mean, during a storm, my goal, and we've talked about this, so the folks who are new to DPL, you know, during a storm, my goal changed about, 10 years ago. It used to just be, look, I want to get the weather right. I get the weather right, I'm doing my job. None of the other stuff matters. I got to get the weather right. And then I kind of learned after Irma, not even after Charlie, I think as much. It was after Irma, for some reason, it just struck me that I think it's because I was seeing so much hype out there. And that's probably what it was, because 6 years ago, social media was really getting going. And you go on social media posts and you see the fear designed to draw people in. And the networks that you guys know that I have issues with, where the loud music that pound during the promos, boom, 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 a storm coming, boom, boom, drives me ballistic. And I don't want to turn into the get off my lawn guy. I really don't. But I find myself getting a little more frustrated with that stuff than I used to, because I just think it hurts people. And especially, so this is, I know what you guys go through, because here's what happens. I'm going to reenact what happens. So, you know, you're here and you're watching whoever you're watching, and you're getting your information out there, and the phone rings. And you pick up the phone, and it's your Aunt Sue in Grand Rapids. And you're like, hello, Aunt Sue. What do you mean I'm going to die? You're watching the Weather Channel and I'm going to die? No. I'm okay. We're watching our local people and we're going to be okay. So that reenactment was not intent to it was intended to be purely fictitious, and any resemblance to anything else is purely coincidental. My point is, I know there's a lot of national networks out there that have a tendency to go all out with these storms. Your relatives are watching them up north. They call you freaked out. It freaks you out. You message me, freaked out. Dennis, why aren't you saying this? I get freaked out, and then I start yelling at people. That is the way, that is the way that it goes. And if it isn't Grand Rapids, it's Columbus. And if it isn't Columbus, it's Buffalo. I mean, you think I don't hear? Oh, I know these calls happen. I know they do. So my point is, about 6 years ago, and again, especially on social media as well, you'll scroll through whatever platform, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, and there are so many armchair meteorologists out there. I mean, look, we all do it. I mean, armchair quarterbacks. I mean, we do the same thing in football games or baseball games. You question the manager. I mean, it's what we do. And I understand that. And I've actually learned to accept it. I ain't going to say I've learned to embrace it because I hate it, but I've learned to at least be a little more tolerant of it sometimes, unless I'm in a mood, and then I'll just ban the person. Matter of fact, funny story. There's a guy, a local guy, who apparently I had a run-in with over the Rays at some point on Twitter. I'm not going to say who he is because he's actually a pretty recognizable person locally. And I didn't know who he was at the time, but all I know is there must have been some sort of something going on, because on Twitter a couple of days ago, he posted, I had a run-in with Denis Phillips, and it showed Denis Phillips has blocked you. And I will tell you, there's something empowering about banning or blocking, because you know you're not going to be bothered anymore. You know, sometimes I'll get in an argument and I'll respond to something and I'll say my side, but it's just easier to ban somebody. So anyway, I must have had a debate. I don't remember it, but must have had a debate with this guy about something, and I'm just like, no thanks, block. So he posted a screenshot of blocking me and saying, hey, you know, people in life, you have to live with your choices and your decisions. And apparently I had a run-in with Denis Phillips over the Rays about something, and now he's banned me or blocked me, and now I can't get my weather information. So people, be responsible with your choices. And it just made me laugh. I thought that was actually very funny. So anyway, point being about, you know me, I have a tendency to go on tangents. Wendy and Jameson, a couple minutes ago, they were saying, they wanted to fill time because they're pretty fried. Now, I was on the air 16 hours straight from 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon to 9 o'clock this morning. And you know me, I can talk. That's no surprise. And they're like, we need to have a talk-off between Paul LaGrone and Denis and see who would win. I'm like, dude, my money's on me. Can I bet on myself? Paul can talk. Paul has the gift of gab, but he ain't ever done weather. And I'm just telling you, at the end of the day, I would be the champion. But the point, again, is, what was my point? All right, so 6 years ago, again, I'm starting to get angry at the fear factor that's being thrown out there for a lot of people, whether it's on social, whether it's on TV, wherever the case may be, to get people to be drawn in, to get people to watch. And I am as against that as there possibly is, and I think it's a mistake anyway. And the reason I think it's a mistake is because, sure, you have a saucy headline or one that promotes fear or whatever. Yeah, somebody's going to click on it from time to time. I think they will. That's kind of human nature. But when you realize what that is and it doesn't turn out happening, as it 98% of the time won't, then all of a sudden you're going to be like, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, or this person is just trying to get some interest or whatever. Whereas I'm the complete opposite of that, right? I really, truly believe you draw loyalty from trust and from more of an empathetic, even-keeled perception and persona on air. And that's kind of what I try to do. Well, it's not kind of, it's exactly what I try to do. And I've learned that my job is not just about getting the weather right. It's about getting people through the storms. And I try to set that tone for our entire news operation. And I truly, in my heart of heart, believe that we do it as well, if not better than anybody out there as a team. The reporters, the anchors, the other weather folks. I'd like to feel that they kind of get their lead from me on that one. And it's because I'm old I get it. It's because I'm old and I've learned this over the years. But I know it's important to you because there's nothing more rewarding. I mean, I'll get some messages from time to time about whatever. But after a storm, the response is always overwhelmingly positive because it's from the folks who realize that we genuinely do care. We really, truly care about the folks at home. And on a national level, I don't know if that's true or not. On a social media level, I don't know if that's true or not. But I know for me personally and for this news team, we really genuinely do. And when you're hurting, we're hurting. And when you're stressed, we try to help with that stress. And for me personally, I know I have the ability to do that by not giving you. And you guys know before this storm even arrived, you guys know that I said this 11 billion times, that this storm for the Bay Area would not bring hurricane force winds. We said it over and over again. Even after there were hurricane warnings up, I'm like, it's not going to happen. And I was going to explain why. And yet it was everywhere. Hurricane warnings, and all it does is promote fear. And to me, there's absolutely nothing worse than that, because you destroy trust and you don't act like you care. You act like you're just telling people whatever. I mean, you get what I'm saying. And bottom line, this last 24 hours, we made it through another one. It was another near miss. But the message that I'm trying to get across somewhere in this long-winded soliloquy is this storm was 125 miles away. How many of you all woke up this morning, and I realized the surge, and we talked about this for several days, that water rise isn't going to impact everybody. As a matter of fact, it's only going to impact kind of a sliver of our overall population, because most of our residents don't live on the water or close enough to the water that a surge is going to bother them. I mean, most of them don't. But the folks who do woke up this morning, and I think a lot of y'all were surprised by how high that water was. Even with the storm surge warnings, even with the exact numbers, and the Weather Service and the Hurricane Center nailed those numbers. Props to them. Great job in the prediction of that storm surge number. And it was with the high tide, but here's my point. That storm was 125 miles away, and look at the water rise that we had. Look at the water rise that we had. By the way, thank you for the stars on here. I'm seeing some stars, and I just wanted to mention this. For today, we typically do our star donations to the Children's Miracle Network. Stars today go to the hurricane relief funds. We did it last year after Ian. Going to do it again today for hurricane relief efforts for Florida through the Red Cross. And again, so that's what anybody who donates stars, and I've seen a few pop up on there, that's where they go to. So thank you very much. It's appreciated. But I repeat, my hope is the folks, I will tell you, my brother-in-law lives near the water in Pasco, and very close to the water, actually. And we called him yesterday, and it's like, dude, you're in a mandatory evacuation zone. My wife called him and said, you should probably get away from that water. And I didn't think he would. I thought he would stay. He did come down, and houses in that area, the cars were underwater today. Not just the tires, the cars were like 2/3 underwater. And his truck would have been totaled if he hadn't have come down. And that was a storm 125 miles away. The water that we saw that went into houses was 125 miles away. So imagine again, just imagine if it had been within 10 or 20 miles. So my hope is, did you see the pictures out of Tarpon Springs today? The bayou floods a lot at high tide. There was water in areas I've never seen before. So I left here for about an hour or two this morning, was trying to get around, and all the roads were blocked off because everything was flooded. You couldn't get anywhere. It was like a maze. You were trying to, it was the maze in The Shining, that you were just trying to get out through that, and you never could. That's the way I felt this morning. But my point again is, if that's what it was so far away, imagine what it would have been like if it was close by. So the lesson we learn out of this, and hopefully one that folks that didn't evacuate, or even that did and knew that they should, hopefully the lesson they see is, look at what the water is. You hide from the wind, you run from the water. Now, last night, we learned, the track. The track was really, really solid on this. And everybody's, we're waiting for it to turn into us. It's going to be an E and it's going to be a Charlie. I'm like, no, it's not. Yes, it is. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, all right, I don't know what I'm talking about. But there was a period of time last night when the track went about 25 miles farther to the west. And the Hurricane Center only takes baby steps. Remember, they don't make dramatic changes to their track, and it's smart that they don't, because we all know the models can go like this. The windshield wiper effect happens regularly. It's rule number 2 in my 7 rules. And by the way, for the new folks, rule number 7 is don't freak out unless I'm freaking out. We're fine. That dates back to Hurricane Isaac when it was coming, but it's turned into something. And a matter of fact, I might as well mention this. Again, proceeds, Children's Miracle Network. Today only proceeds go to the Red Cross. And again, this is our Etsy page, our rule number 7 page. It's posted right now just below this post. You see it right here. This is a family thing that my wife and myself and my kids do. Most of the stuff we make by hand and ship out. We have added some new stuff that ships within like 5 days, which is way better than the 4 to 6 weeks that we make ourselves. So they've really improved that. There's coffee mugs, there's wine tumblers, there's mouse pads. And again, it's all rule number 7 stuff. There's a lot more on there as well. And proceeds usually benefit the Children's Miracle Network. We've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years. But this year, or today rather, we're doing American Red Cross for the Hurricane Relief Fund. So I want to mention that because I get a lot of new folks during storms saying, what the heck is rule number 7? So anyway, that's the lesson that I learned. The water issue was one that I think was surprising for a lot of folks. And last night, as the track kept getting closer and closer to Tallahassee, I know there were a lot of folks who could tell I was getting upset, getting nervous, because the track was going very close to Tallahassee, and my son is at FSU. And I posted a picture with him and his friends watching me at his apartment on our streaming app to decide what to do, whether he should evacuate. And I called him and said, you should stay put and ride it out. And at that point, the Hurricane Center finally did shift the track about 50 miles west. And go figure, right after they shifted it, an hour or two later, it curved like it was supposed to in the beginning and did exactly what the first forecast was going to be, which was into the Big Bend. But, we learn a lot through these, and you try to, for me, it isn't learning about how to forecast any differently, because the forecasts are the forecast and you do your best. It's about how you present that information to everybody else. So again, hopefully y'all are talking amongst yourselves. You usually do. And I will tell you, I am so appreciative of every one of, well, maybe not all of you, but about 4 or 5. And those people, I don't care if you never show up again because you're rude. But besides them, everybody else, I'm so appreciative of. And the folks who sent Diet Dr. Pepper for our team, the cake girl who sent little bitty Denis Phillips cupcakes for our newsroom. We had some folks dropping off some stuff from Publix. It is such a heartwarming experience when we have any kind of a natural disaster or a stressor, a natural stressor, where we all pull together. And I'll tell you, as much bickering and animosity and fighting and whatnot that goes on in our society at times, and we all know that exists, when there is it warms my heart. I mean, I do. I get emotional thinking about it, because you so often see the negative and the especially on social media. People are mean on social media a lot of times. We all know this. There's a lot of heartless people on social media, and they like to be trolls. And you know me, I fight with them. I don't back down. It's one of my biggest flaws. I'll sit there and I'll go after them, and I know I'm not supposed to, but I can't help myself. It's just one of my biggest flaws and drawbacks. But there's all that. We all know on a daily basis we see that, whether it's at work or at home or at school or the neighborhood or whatever. But during a storm, the amount that folks come together to try to get through it, and especially in a stressful situation. And trust me, I can sense the stress when I read the messages. Sometimes people are a little terse in the messages or even something on here, but it's only because they're nervous and they're scared and they're stressed about it. And we certainly recognize that. We do. And that's kind of where this whole rule number 7 thing started. Don't freak out unless I'm freaking out. We're fine. And that's kind of where we got the mindset, look, we're going to get through this together. And I know it's cliche. I know it is, but it's true. And I see it during these storms because I see the goodness in people and I see the way people try to help each other. And today I remember Paul was live let me tell you, Paul Agrone, they were in the perfect spot because they were live today when the hurricane went in as a Cat 3, Cat 4, borderline Cat 4, right in at Perry, right? And Paul was at this hotel, and man, he was in the middle of it. I would have traded anything. I would have given anything to trade with him. And he's sitting there, and he's being blown around, and, we're telling him to get in because there's debris falling around, and it's pretty riveting television. I wonder at home if the people are like, hey, idiot, get out of the wind. What are you doing? Or if they're like, oh, man, this is pretty awesome. I think he's going to get hit with that piece of debris. Or if they're like really appreciative, thinking, okay, that's what it's like. Maybe all of the above. I don't know. But my point is, as he was coming in, there were people who were looking at video of their neighborhood that had just been hit by the eye wall. And it just brings home to you. And these people, Paul had never met them before. They had never met Paul. And they, I'm sure, were really stressed and upset and everything. And yet, and it had nothing to do with that he was on TV. It was just, you could just see the relationship and the empathy between Paul and with these people that are going through this. And they shared that with us on TV. And it was really a heart-wrenching moment. But it was one that I looked at, and it just reminded me that there is that relationship. And I don't want to get a whole kumbaya stuff. I mean, I really don't. That's not my intent. But my point is, I thank everybody out there because your support and your loyalty and your comments mean the world to us because we put in some pretty lengthy hours during storms, and we do it because we really, truly are trying to help people get through a stressful situation. Every single person on our weather team feels the same way about it. I mean, that is our goal. And when we present the information, we do it as tenderly as possible, even in a bad news situation. And you guys know me. I feel like Captain Kirk in There's No Such Thing as a no-win situation, or there's whatever that, the whole Kobayashi, whatever that thing is, where, Trekkies know what I'm talking about. And Spock and Kirk went against each other at first because Kirk did not believe there's no such thing as a no-win situation. And I agree. I mean, I really do. And I think when we get into a tropical situation where people are blasting national news, this is a massive storm ready to destroy 1.8 billion people, or social media. Look at this Cat 4. You better run. You better click now because this is going to happen. And to me, that's just not the way to do it. Not to mention, it's just not true the majority of the time. You have got a best case scenario. You have got a worst case scenario. And this is true in life. We all know it's usually somewhere in the middle, right? So why focus on the negative stuff all the time? Why try to say, well, this is the worst case? Look, dude, we all know worst case scenarios. You don't need to hit us over the head with them. If there's a Cat 5 hurricane coming and it could conceivably hurt or kill people, we know that already inherently. We don't need you to remind us. Maybe you can remind folks that it might not be as bad. Now I get it, and I have been accused at times of candy coating stuff. I've never candy coated stuff and stuff that I didn't truly believe we could be okay. I'm not going to look at a Cat 5 down the barrel and know when it's a mile away, it could still turn. No, but I do have enough experience, and you do too, how storms have been coming into the Bay Area and they turn. and the model's 3 days out saying we're going to get hit, that by no means means we're going to get hit. As a matter of fact, my wife, who's supposed to be supporting of my meteorological ability, when I'm like 3 days out saying the storm is going to be here, and she's like, yeah, but it's going to turn. They're never where they're supposed to be in 3 days. Yeah, okay. So, you know, I'm going to go back and read your comments because I truly have not looked at any comments, and I bet they're actually pretty hysterical. But, oh, is there a troll in here? Somebody says it's time to block the troll. Aw, man. I wish I'd looked at it earlier because I truly do love having the power of banning trolls. It's kind of invigorating. So, but anyway, point is, you know, offer a little bit of hope. People already know the bad stuff. Maybe they need to be reminded that the good stuff could happen too. And at the end of the day, it's usually somewhere in between. And that's what happened with this storm. Think about it. I mean, there was some bad stuff. And the area around Perry, I mean, devastating stuff. But you could look at the overall view of Florida, and this storm, even though it was devastating for that very small part around Perry and over toward that beach, if it had hit the Tampa Bay area, it would have been, people would have died because there's a lot of people that don't evacuate, and they would have not been around. They would have not evacuated like they should have because, as was the case in Fort Myers Beach, they decided to stay because they didn't believe it. You know, or it could have gone into Tallahassee, and all those trees could have fallen on apartment complexes or houses with a Cat 4 or Cat 5 hurricane. All those possibilities exist. There's always a what if, but why do you always focus on the worst what if, right? Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. It's just kind of the way that I feel. My point again is, the storm's over for us. It is still impacting the Carolinas as a tropical storm and creating some water and even possibility of some tornadoes in that area as well. The track is not going to go back around. As a matter of fact, if you look here, I mean, again, still, now it's actually down to winds of 65. So it's gone from 70 to 65, moving northeast. And there was the GFS, hashtag cha-ching, the GFS was trying to bring it back around, but it looks like that's not going to happen. So as we go through hurricane season, we are by no means out of the woods yet, right? We're just into August, the peak of the season. This season is going to last longer. This season will last through October. The additional warmth in the water in the Atlantic, and for that matter, the Caribbean and the Gulf, even though it cooled off briefly, it'll warm back up. The additional warmth in there, and boy, that was a lesson I learned. Okay, you want to talk about lessons learned out of these storms? So you remember last week, I'm like, well, there's a lot of other factors going into whether or not a storm is going to develop more than just the warm water. We all knew the warm water was excessively warm. And granted, the storm did not really get cranking until it avoided some shear that had been going on around Cuba. But boy, you never underestimate the warmth and energy or the energy and the potential energy of that warm water, because it showed how fast it can really develop this go around. And again, as we go through hurricane season, which continues through the end of November, but realistically through October, we're going to continue to see a lot of action out there. And the storm surge graphic you see right here, again, today was a perfect example. The water builds. It is not rainfall that builds surge. It is actual Gulf water that is pushed in. And it continues to be pushed in until it hits something concave that it can no longer be pushed against. It hits the wall and it rises. That is storm surge. But you don't have just the rise in the water. You also have the waves on top of the water. And unfortunately, that's what happened in Kenton Beach, around Perry, when you saw some houses, as was the case in Fort Myers as well, that was devastated last year with Ian. So I will go through and read all your comments. I am going to actually do a little more weather. The streamers are going to be gone in about 40 seconds, but I will say this again one more time. I thank you guys for choosing our station and our team to trust in during tropics. I know you switch around a lot. That's perfectly fine. But I do appreciate your loyalty and your confidence in us. It means the world to us. And we hope that we're giving you what you need to feel safe as possible in a scary situation as this was for at least a period of time before we knew it was going to move around. So again, I'm going to continue on Facebook as well as YouTube. For streamers, thanks for stopping by, and you guys have a good night. So the streamers are gone, all right? And again, looking at that surge issue, we lived it today. Today, you got to experience what storm surge really does. From a storm that was over 100 miles away. And that, to me, is just so important. Go look at the video of the water increase in areas in the Big Bend. Steinhatchee. Go in and look at the video. It was pretty much underwater. And that was about a 15-foot surge. So you have the surge as you see, but you also have the water rise and then the waves on top of the water rise. And you see that's a 12-plus foot surge right there, and that's what we had. We had about a 15-foot surge right at landfall. So wherever the eye is going, just to the right and up from the eye, that area is where the highest surge will be. And we talked about this a lot on air. Another thing that I think spreads fear, the winds were maxed at 130. You'll see bullet headlines, 130 mile an hour winds coming to Florida, 130 mile an hour winds, this and that. That is 100% misinformation. Now, is it accurate? Okay. Is it truthful? Yes. Is it accurate? No. Now, why is that? Because those 130, when you say 130 mile an hour winds are coming to Florida, you think that entire storm has 130 mile an hour. I'd think that. I mean, if I didn't have any training in meteorology, maybe I'm obtuse. I don't know. But I would think that that means a big old area of 130 mile an hour winds is coming my way. It doesn't. Typically, when you see those, that whatever that high number is, that is maximum sustained winds. So when the hurricane hunters or the buoys are going through this storm, when it measures a 60-second increment of whatever that wind is, the highest wind, that is what it is. It is always in a sliver of that storm. So you realistically have a storm that might be 800 miles wide, or the diameter is 1,600 miles, whatever the case may be, if it's a huge storm or not. The amount of area that is covered by that 130 mile an hour winds might be 5 miles. Literally 5 miles, right around the eye wall. Sometimes it's a little bigger, sometimes it's smaller. But that's a pretty good estimate. 5 miles. So you're hearing 130 miles a mile an hour wind is coming this way. When reality, no, most of it is 70 or 75 or 80. Now, I'm not going to belittle 75 or 80 mile an hour winds, but we all know that's not the kind of winds that are going to do a lot of damage as Floridians. And in this particular storm, the hurricane force winds extended out 25 miles. That was it. And this is why it was driving me crazy that everybody was pushing the hurricane warning. It's simple math. That storm was 150 miles offshore. Hurricane winds extended 25 miles offshore. You tell me how we're going to get sustained hurricane force winds when you have hurricane force winds extending 25 miles out and our coast is 150 miles away. Drove me crazy. So was it truthful? Yes. Was it accurate? No. So that's when you hopefully have someone who will explain that to you without trying to be like, hey, here, the promo runs, boom, 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 because that's what it sounds like. No lie. With Irma 6 years ago, I turned on the Weather Channel for 15 seconds the entire time, and it happened to be a promo that was running. And I'm mocking that sound, but that is what that sound sounded like exactly. Boom, 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 tracking Irma. And then there was the the COVID cane thing. That is when I lost it. When I saw the Weather Channel actually promoting a COVID cane, I hit the wall. I haven't watched since. I literally have not watched since. And I know the Mets are great. They've got great meteorologists there. They've got really knowledgeable people. I'm never going to say anything about that. But when I saw that that was the direction that that went, I could not handle it anymore. And I literally have not turned it on since. So, again, my point is, I have no idea what my point was, but the trust factor is important to me, and hopefully we were there for you. All right, so again, you're looking at surge. We had actually a 15-foot surge today in areas right at the eye and just to the right of eye. And again, as I said, it isn't just the rise in water, it is the waves that go along the rise in water. And we obviously had that today. So my hope, what we learned out of this as a group is, look, the EOC, the emergency management folks, they know every nook and every cranny of their area. They know what areas flood and what doesn't. I don't. I'm flat out clueless when it comes to which areas are more prone to flood than others, especially little small areas. I mean, we have a massive viewing area from Citrus County to Sarasota County to Highlands County. And when it comes to who's going to flood and who isn't, I can tell you meteorologically who's going to get the water, but I certainly can't say, well, in this area, this cul-de-sac here, this gets water, but the area next to it doesn't. And we all know that's the stuff that happens. And the EOC folks do. So when they issue an evacuation order, and I will tell you, there was a moment on the radio. We do a lot of radio work with Beasley Media and Q105, where they're one of our station's partners, and Todd Schnitt, MJ, who has a morning show and been in this market forever, the whole MJ BJ thing back in the 90s and whatnot. But anyway, I was on the air with them for over an hour the last couple of days, and we had some Q&A. And a woman from Crystal Beach, which is literally down the street from me. Now, I do know that geography, and that might have helped. But she called me and said, we have an evacuation, a mandatory evacuation, but I'm really thinking I don't want to go. I think we're okay. We've never flooded before. This is how high we were. And I said, look, I said, in my opinion, if you have a mandatory evacuation, and I think she had a clearance of 5 or 6 feet, I would get out. And she's like, well, I don't really think we need to. And I go, there's going to be significant water with this. And today, almost all of Ozona and Crystal Beach was underwater. So I think we made the right call. But even if I made the wrong call, I mean, well, it wasn't the wrong call, because if there's a mandatory evacuation, you should get out. But we all know some people aren't gonna, and I get it. It's a hassle. It's a pain in the butt to have to pick up all your stuff that you want to get and take it with you and then go back. And a lot of times nothing happens, and then you're like, oh man, those weather people stink. They don't know what they're talking about. Why did I listen to them? I'm so dumb. I mean, come on, we hear that a lot, right? So I was pleased that she listened and was going to. And I'll tell you one other time, and this was back in Charlie days. There was a woman who called me, and back then this was a phone call thing. And she was in a mobile home, and she was not going to evacuate. She lived in Polk County. And I believe she had a child or a niece or whoever was in a wheelchair. And she asked me if they should evacuate out of the mobile home. And my take was, yeah, if you're in a mobile home and you have winds over 70 to 75 miles an hour, you want to go to a shelter. Because Charlie had winds of 130, 140, right? And she's like, yeah, but it's really difficult to pick up, in the wheelchair and everything. And I said, I get it, but mobile homes are so dangerous, and this storm is going to cut through Polk County, more than likely, even though the track was Hillsborough, but we still thought it was going to make it to Polk. And she called me. I didn't hear from her. She called me about a week later and said that they did go to the shelter. And when they got home after the shelter, a big tree, had fallen through the mobile home and went right into the bedroom of where her niece or daughter, I can't remember which it was, had been sleeping, right on her bed. And the child would have died. That is the stuff that really gets me. So anyway, that's why we do this. And I would love to hear things that you think we need to do better, things that would be more helpful to you, more beneficial, like maybe things that we think that we're doing well, but we're not, and the next storm we'll be able to do better, because that's why we are here, in spite of public opinion about the media, local media media in general, I don't speak for national media. I don't know what their motivations are, but I do know local media. And I will tell you, practically every reporter I've ever worked with in local news, they're not there to be on TV and be the whole superstar celebrity thing. They're there because they really care about their community and they want to help. It's a true story. I'm not just saying that. I'm a weather guy. I don't do that stuff. I'm not a reporter, but I see it. And it isn't what a lot of people think. I told you this story. It was at the Gasparilla Festival of Arts. And I'm interviewing a nice older guy from Hawaii about the art that he's doing. And some dude sticks his head into the tent and yells, "Fake news, fake news." And I'm like, dude, I'm a weather guy. We lie half the time anyway. Of course it's fake news, trying to make light of it, right? But then I said, do you really think that our reporters here are all tied up in that whole national fake news, non-fake news thing? No, they just are doing stories on their community. And for weather people, we're the same way. We do stuff because we really, truly care about the community. And I'm not going to lie, earlier in my career when I was younger, I cared more about getting the weather right. I'm not going to lie. I did. That was my passion. I loved tropical systems. If I got the weather right, I was doing my job. And I've learned as I've gotten older and as I've had kids and I don't want to say mature because I don't think I have matured at all, but I do believe that, we've learned that, getting people through a storm, holding them by the hand and getting them through is, to me, more important than actually getting the weather right. If I can look at a storm, even if we got it wrong, and someone says, you helped me with my stress, you made it easier. And today, the messages that I'm getting, that's a lot of what we're getting as a team. So I wanted to thank you for that. So anyway, I will briefly talk about what else is going on in the tropics, which is nothing. We've got, I'll call up the NHC page real quick. Again, thank you for all the stars. Those go toward the Red Cross Hurricane Relief Fund today. And all of our Etsy stuff, same thing. We have been really trying to up our game on our Etsy page to offer more things. My wife loves tennis. She's been doing some tennis stuff. My son loves pickleball. We've been doing pickleball stuff. And again, with all of our sales, we take a lot of pride in a 5-star seller with lots of sales. And again, the proceeds go to various charities, including the Children's Miracle Network. But today it's going to be, again, for the American Red Cross. But you see all this stuff on here: coffee mugs, wine tumblers, water bottles, the whole 9 yards. So let's go back to the NHC real quick. We have what's left of Idalia, now down to 65 miles an hour. If you look ultimately at the track, it is going to be more of a curve away from the U.S. as opposed to turning up and back in a little loop-de-loop like it was before. But the rest of the area, you have Tropical Depression 11, that's going to do nothing. You have Franklin, that was a major hurricane, very near Bermuda, but not going to bother. And I guess this is one that folks were a little more interested in out in the eastern Atlantic. It is going to develop quite likely, but if it does, it is not posing any threat to land. It's going to be too far north. So we're going to get a break. We're going to get a chance to, I'm looking, Bridget, you just asked something. So you're posting something to Paul. Is that Paul Wilson, as in Mark Wilson's brother, as in Patrick Wilson's brother? All from Big Stone Gap, Virginia, if that's who you're talking to, because I know Paul pretty well. My mom was from Big Stone Gap, Virginia. Little known fact, John Wilson, Paul Wilson, Mark Wilson, Patrick Wilson, movie star, Mary Kay Wilson, that whole crew, incredibly talented family, as you all know. They are from Big Stone Gap, Virginia, which is a little bitty town in southwestern Virginia. And my mother is from Big Stone Gap, Virginia. And my mother has since passed away, and so has John Wilson's mother. But it's a funny story. A lot of you know John, or knew of him. He anchored at Channel 13 and at Channel 10. And when I went home to see my mom, she brought me over to Mrs. Wilson's house. And John Wilson, who's, a well-known retired anchor whose son is Mark at Channel 13, she called him Johnny because he was her daughter, or his son, her son. They had a wing of trophies and achievements and things unlike I have ever seen. The wing was bigger than my house. I mean, it was just insanity. And so I hear from Paul from time to time when Janine had never heard of the Wilson family. Yeah, really, really talented family. And Mark is an anchor at Channel 13. Give stand by. Give Christina Bishop a shout out. Christina Bishop, you have a shout out as of right now. The bottom line, the next 2 days, we are going to continue to see some moisture. The moisture plume across the state is going to feed into what's left of Idalia. I am going to be so glad this storm is gone because I still don't know how to pronounce his name. The person who does our voice of God thing of trucking, hurricane, he said it one way. Wendy said it one way. I said it one way. I actually called it like Idalia one time. I don't even know what I was saying. And that was before I was going through sleep deprivation. And they actually went in and took my audio from another time I said it right and put it over in the recording. So I'll be good riddance. And this will be another ice storm retired. So yet again, we will now have had Ivan, Irma, Ian, and Idalia, or whatever. That name will also be retired as well. So anyway, hopefully you guys got your, I didn't really hear of a lot of power outages. There were some. I didn't hear of any at my place, which was fortunate. The water was a real issue today. It's getting better. We are still going to see a significant high tide tomorrow, a king tide around 3 o'clock. But by then, the onshore flow should be pretty weak, and I don't think it's going to be much of an issue. So that's about it, folks. You know, I know there's going to be a lot of y'all who won't be here since the hurricane's going to be gone. We do this on every Tuesday and every Thursday night. When there's a storm coming, we do it a lot more, typically almost nightly. Sometimes I do it from home. If you're new, again, this is an expression one of the folks from way back when said, it's like a bunch of us out in the backyard in lawn chairs talking all over each other, having your own conversations in the chat, and I'm just kind of the moderator, and I love that. I love the camaraderie of this group. I love the loyalty. I really, truly think of y'all as my family. I know that sounds weird and creepy and whatever, but I do. I love and adore this group, and I'm thankful for all of you every day. I truly am. So you guys have a great night. We're good to go now. That high tide tomorrow will still be 3 feet. So you're going to see some rise of water in a few spots that typically see rise of water, but nothing that should cause any significant problems. It may slow down the draining of the water in a few spots, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. All right? So again, thanks for everything. We got a long way to go in this hurricane season, and you be assured that whenever there's a tropical system around, we will be there 24/7. You ain't ever going to find a weather team that's going to outwork us. Maybe you'll like them more. Maybe you'll think they're more accurate. I don't know the case. Maybe I doubt that, but nevertheless, you might. But you won't find anybody who pulls more hours than we do during a storm on social media, in person, because it is our pride and joy to be looked at as the people who can help get you through these challenging times. And today was certainly, as the last couple of days, was certainly a challenging time for the state of Florida. So thanks again for everything, folks. Have a great night, and I will see you on our next edition of Denis Phillips Live. Have a good night.
One natural disaster could change your life forever. What can you do? Turn to AARP. We help older adults and their families prepare, respond, and recover with evacuation checklists to help you remember prescriptions and other essentials, information to help you avoid scammers, connections to on-the-ground emergency responders, and lots of other tips and tools. At AARP, we're here to help. Find us at aarp.org/local.